So back again with yet another episode of How Much of the Truth Can I Tell Without Getting Cancelled and or having a stroke before the apocalypse hits the fan. Let me tell you, it's a fine line I walk here, guys. It is a fine line straddling the boundaries of that Overton window, being edgy enough just to be interesting, but square enough to fit in that square peg so that I don't get cancelled and shadow banned or marginalized or whatever the hell. It's tough. It's difficult. All I can say is I divulge things strategically. I try to be a moving target, as should you. The cardinal rule of prepping is the gray man strategy. Be a moving target. If you're taking online surveys, make sure you always give the wrong answer, because you never know if the eye in the sky is watching. And one piece of wisdom for you, I'm not sure if I made this saying up or if this is something that was concocted on the basis of things I've heard in the past. Probably one of those zeitgeist things where multiple people around the world thought about it at once. It goes a little something like this. Intellect is knowing what to say. Wisdom is knowing when to say it. Okay? And that's all you need to know. I know things that I don't say. Doesn't mean I'm harboring some sort of nutty tinfoil hat theories about shadowy figures running the world and, various rings of criminal crime syndicates doing all sorts of crazy satanic stuff. I'm not going there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I don't divulge every single thing I know, and neither should you. You have to be a moving target. Wisdom is knowing when to say it. More often than not, people don't realize they live in a glass house. A lot of these young, rebellious people, they start flapping their gums, and they don't realize, just like the Joker said, they're like a dog. They're chasing a car, but they don't know what they would do if they caught it. So don't be a dog. Okay, that's the moral of the story. Don't be a cynic, canine. That's where that originated in Greek philosophical thought. Anyways, here we go with the rundown of what the hell is going on in the world. Today we have Hamas threatening Joe Biden, saying that he is responsible for the stormtroopery that went on in the hospital night. Insanely dystopian scenes coming out of Gaza right now, but it's all humanitarian. It's completely in line with international law, so nothing to see here. 300,000 people apparently in Washington Square, whatever the hell it is, Washington Monument, and it's all good. It's all Biden approved. Israel is planning a massive northern operation. Netanyahu is summoning advisors from the north. We have Russian bombers arming up for a massive campaign. Nobody is talking about this one. This is another exclusive, not just for me, but you're just not going to hear about this anywhere else. They got 11 bombers getting armed up. This has massive implications for U.S. Stratcom and, of course, the Ukrainians, which are likely going to be impacted when these bombers run riot over the skies coming as winter approaches. We have Russian submarines in the Mediterranean, in addition to live fire exercises that are going to be happening just miles from a U.S. fleet. We're going to talk about the implications of that. We have the Houthi leader, as you see behind me here, the honey badgers of the Middle East still don't give a fuck. They are threatening now to attack Israeli commercial vessels. Yes, you heard right. We're going to talk about the implications of this. They are going to be profoundly negative on the global economy. And this is a 4D chess move if there ever was one. Netanyahu is now saying something that Zelensky said. Remember when Zelensky said, well, we are dying, and if we don't die, then eventually you Europeans and you Americans are going to be dying here for us? Well, Netanyahu took a script out of the book of Zelensky, and he said the exact same thing. He threatened the United States and Europe, and he said, if we don't do what we got to do with Hamas, you guys are going to be fighting them eventually. Sure enough, almost as if they were queued up, Hamas threatens Joe Biden and co. We have the UK protesting now the hosting of nuclear weapons, which is going to be happening very soon, and U.S. soldiers to oversee those nuclear weapons. If you don't think things are ratcheting up, then you just don't think that much. Poland is getting ready to deploy an entire division, 30,000 troops, along the border with Belarus. And as you can expect, Belarus is not too happy about that. Ukraine appears to be collapsing. And I say appears because you just never know. I mean, if you were to base it on the slow motion train wreck that is the SBU spokesperson, I'm not sure what they're identifying because I think they're detransitioning, or they haven't really, it's kind of like their strategic ambiguity with their identifying of what they are right now. Maybe that's what Ukraine's doing. Maybe this is misdirection. Maybe they're feigning weakness so that the Russians throw everything into Advivka and it completely shit the bed, and then that's when the Ukrainians are really going to start the counteroffensive. We just don't know what's going on. No, there's a lot of people think, oh, Zelensky's done, the CIA's going there, they got big plans to take him out or whatever. You just never know, man. Just remember, these people are dumb, but they're not that dumb. They're also Machiavellian at the same time. Biden giving Iran money, according to some people, that's not really what's happening. We're going to debunk and elaborate on what exactly is going on there. We have another parapraxis from Joe Biden saying that China has real problems under Xi. Now, this is according to the India Times, which I presume would be a fairly reputable news source. They're saying that this was a slip-up that Biden made, where he said, and this is right on the eve of the APEC summit, okay? And with these summits, just remember what happened in 2021. Putin met with Biden. Everybody thought it was, they kind of went so-so, but it was progress. Sure enough, 6 months later, NATO and Russia are at war. So, if anything, this is one last-ditch Hail Mary by both of the leaders to try to prevent a major war from ensuing. The U.S. military is going to be building a nuclear spaceship, so they say, and guess how much it costs? Guess how much it costs? Well, they're saying it's going to initially cost $33 million. Get real. A nuclear-powered spaceship is likely going to be in the billions, but they love to throw that number out there for some reason. I'm just simply unaware of at this point, but they keep doing it. So what is the real purpose of this nuclear spaceship? I believe there was a covert spaceship mission that they had up there. What the hell was it called? X something or other, and it's top secret stuff. Nobody knows what it's for. Some people think it actually had nuclear weapons on it. Who knows? We'll talk a little bit about that. We also have a Princeton study that now says that a nuclear attack on just the missile silos alone, just the Minuteman missile silos alone, would lead to a 90% kill rate. 90% kill rate. So that's before attacking any of the cities. That's before the EMP effects and before attacking any other nuclear bases. Just the missile silos as a result of the ground bursts and the radiation that could be caused by the actual detonation of the nukes themselves in the ground, and how great the radioactive contamination would be as a result of that. So it's from Princeton, so you just never know how up on their stuff they actually are. Let's get to it. Now, we got a lot of stuff to cover today. The Yemenis are sending out all kinds of weird signals as usual. I should say the Houthis. We got to talk about this because most people don't realize the amount of marine activity in around the Middle East. I mean, it is profound, especially when you have the Suez Canal here. Okay, there's just a lot of stuff that is going on. What is this blinking here? Is this, oh, that's because I clicked that guy. So anyways, there's just thousands of ships at any given moment, and this is something you have to factor in. It's not just about the fact that the United States might be able to crush any of these countries, probably not Iran, but you get the point. You really have to consider whether or not commercial traffic is going to be safe, what the cost of it's going to be, what the associated cost of shipping increases are going to be as a result of insurance premiums going up, and the whole 9 yards. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, let's talk about the main course today. Russian bombers are arming up, and this is likely going to be of great concern for Stratcom. Whether or not the Russians and the Americans have communicated about this on the back channels, because the Americans and the Russians always have to presume, especially in the current highly tense situation of geopolitics around the world, they always have to assume that the other side is lying to them, okay? Now, one of the telltale signs that nuclear war is about to start is that they're starting to power up and fuel up the bombers, okay? Now, it's been very difficult because Russia is in a conventional war with Ukraine. So every time they're putting bombers up in the air, 99 times out of 100, we should presume it's probably because they're going on another bombing raid in Ukraine. However, the United States always has to assume the worst because this is one of those things. It takes a long time to prepare bombers. Now, what did we have happen recently? We had the United States release its most advanced B-21 Raider nuclear stealth bomber. Okay, that's clearly a flex. All the F-35s that they're putting in forward positions in and around Europe, and the new tactical nuclear weapons, the lack of any treaties anymore. I mean, the writing's on the wall. We don't need to go over this every single time. I don't know if somebody's just coming to this video, you got a lot of catching up to do. Just understand that we are at the highest risk of nuclear Armageddon that the world has ever seen, period, point blank. And what we have happening here is the assembly, simultaneous loading of 11 bombers at once, and I don't even know how big the Russian fleet is, but I don't think it's that big. So this is pretty substantial. So the United States must presume, because these are bombers on the nuclear triad, Engels Air Base is a strategic air base. Remember about a year ago when the Ukrainians attacked this base, myself and others thought, I mean, this was a massive red line. This had to be a massive escalation because they targeted two of Russia's nuclear-capable bombers at what is commonly known as one of their biggest air bases, which is dedicated to the launching of their air-based nuclear weapons for their aviation. Even though that's not a huge component of the Russian nuclear triad, which is maybe why it didn't escalate as much as it did. But understand that this is a signal that the United States has to interpret as a threat, meaning that their DEFCON level, their combat readiness, I almost don't even like saying DEFCON anymore because I don't think it's as stepwise as we all think it is. I'm sure that the system has been optimized. The actual system is top secret now, so I don't think it's step 3, 2, 1. I think there's different gradations that have probably evolved in terms of that protocol. But 11 Tu-95s and Tu-160 long-range aircraft that are nuclear capable. They can carry Kh-102 nuclear weapons that have a 5,000-kilometer range. And I can't remember the actual tonnage, but it's something really, really heavy, something like 2,000 kilograms per bomb or something crazy like that. And this obviously is going to get the attention of STRATCOM. This is the largest amassing of bomber force that we've seen since the beginning of the war. And another reason why this is so significant is because what it means is that the Russians aren't intimidated by the Ukrainian drone strikes anymore. You know how at the beginning of the year, the Russian was setting up all kinds of missile defense throughout the country because these drones, these 1,000 Beaver drones, Bobber drones, whatever they're called, 1,000-kilometer range drones were penetrating Russian airspace and hitting their targets deep, all the way into Moscow. Well, apparently, according to a Ukrainian commander today, he said that the Russian electronic warfare has gotten so good that their drones are pretty much now ineffective. And that's just probably why we haven't heard about it, not just because, you know, Israel has been hogging the limelight and it's been overshadowed by that conflict, but because they simply aren't getting them that deep into Russian territory anymore. Now they are still, as we know, there's a few attacks on Russian nuclear bases, so the Russians claim, and things of that nature, but nothing that really stands out, and certainly not an attack like we've seen earlier in the year on the airport or on Engels Air Base. But what we're seeing here is the largest amassing of force. Now, what this is likely for is a major conventional strike before winter on critical infrastructure, okay? Coordinated strike. They don't have tires on the planes anymore, apparently. It's, you know, they're not doing that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it doesn't really matter. But they were doing this weird thing where they're putting tires all along the wings, supposed to maybe muffle the signal of the drones or something, and or perhaps just minimize the damage to the plane if the drone did hit. These are very expensive planes. They're not doing that anymore. And these bombers are within range of the ATACMS. As far as I know, they're certainly in range of the drones. So this is a substantial escalation. This means that they're planning something big, a massive strike. It could also mean that they're about to do something nuclear. Now, I still think, you know, in light of what we've seen thus far in this conflict and the rather slow incline of the escalatory ladder, it's been vertical, but, you know, it's been, I'd say, like on a 10-degree incline, whereas many of us thought it would just be parabolic. I'm guilty as charged, but that doesn't mean it's getting any better. So this is just something to know, that you're going to see a massive bombing campaign start any day now. And this could just be posturing. This could be Putin's way of putting Zelensky on notice. But we don't know how equipped Zelensky is. We don't know what the plan actually is. Was the counteroffensive all just a ruse in the first place? What is their plan? Are they that one-dimensional that they just put all their cards out there for the world to see? Maybe, but I'm not entirely convinced on that. So I guess we will see what happens. We have Poland deploying tank battalions on the Belarusian border. Eventually, they're going to step it up to 30,000 soldiers armed with K2 tanks. I think those might be South Korean. Abrams tanks, K9 howitzers, and more. And this is going to be a massive escalation because, of course, on the border between Belarus, I don't have my map up right now. I guess I could show you on the marine map. On the border between Belarus and Ukraine, Belarus and Poland, this border right here, there's already a limited amount of corridors. I think there's one corridor that you can pass through, and there's all sorts of checkpoints and stuff you have to go through. They have anti-tank Hedgehogs set up here. They have all kinds of fortified installations along the border. They've probably even mined some of it. We know that there's 500,000 mines that separate northern Ukraine and Belarus. And it's all about this Suwalki corridor to the exclave of Kaliningrad, that of course you can't see up there. There it is. This is where Russia likely has a lot of its strategic assets. And if this place was cut off or attacked, or the Russians felt that the logistics routes and the supply chain to Kaliningrad was going to be compromised, that would be a declaration of war, period, point blank. So the amassing of troops along the border of Belarus is concerning. It could be something to do with the fact that Germany pulled its Patriots and they're trying to just posture to keep any threats at bay, but you just never know. Okay, now we also have a situation with Russian submarines. I don't have all my maps up, but apparently there's Russian submarines in the Mediterranean. There's Russian submarines everywhere. The whole idea with the strategic submarines is you don't really know where they are. So this is the Mediterranean here. This is Cyprus. Okay, so this is where a lot of the aircraft carriers are, and the warships, the American warships, right around this region. Russia is going to be doing a live fire exercise right around here, and apparently there's concern that there are nuclear submarines floating around this region. Maybe not even nuclear, maybe just like attack submarines, but some people are speculating that the sole reason for keeping the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier fleet near Crete is not only the anti-ship missiles systems of Hezbollah. It's estimated, and I showed you that map yesterday, the range of Hezbollah missiles. It's estimated that the recent influx of numerous improved Kilo-class Russian submarines to the region is why the fleet is trying to stay as close to Crete and its submarine detection and tracking systems. That's why if you're seeing a lot of you guys on flight radar, you're seeing a lot of weird flight patterns and sub-hunters. That's probably why, okay? Because this could just blow up into a massive hotbed of activity. Recall that the Bosphorus is right up here, and that's where all the ships come into the Black Sea. I've long since suspected that a lot of what is going on here is going to be interpreted by the Russians as approaching the Black Sea, approaching their doorstep. So reconnaissance flights of aircraft and helicopters based in Cyprus and Crete have also significantly increased due to the submarine threat, and this is why they suspect that you're going to see more accidents like the one you did where the 5 soldiers died. Of course, a lot of that I think is due to evacuations that are currently covertly taking place in Lebanon. So that is what is going on the NATO-Russo-Ukraine war front. Now, let's go over to the Yemenis, because these guys are crazy, okay? Now, but the Yemenis, you know, they've taken a different approach here, right? They've just put it all out there because maybe they just got nothing to lose. And this is not the Yemenis, this is the Houthis, okay? We're not talking about the Yemenis government, which is in cahoots with Saudi Arabia and the United States alliance. This is the Houthis. Now, the Houthis have some cards to play here. Because when you're talking about international waterways, if this were to happen in a place where there was no possibility of a trade corridor being impacted, then they wouldn't have a whole lot of cards to play. But the simple fact that they are threatening ships, okay, now they're saying, and this is just another propaganda video showing them blowing up a ship. They have a rather explicit, let me see here, message. This is about as explicit as it gets. A ship that says Israel with cargo containers on it, and it clearly is on fire. I don't even think we need to know what is going on up there in that language. We can just assume that, you know, they're talking about targeting commercial vessels, and this is the whole thing. Targeting military vessels is one thing, but which one of these thousands of ships is going to want to put their cargo at risk going through this region, okay? If anything, a lot of these guys, because you can see it's not only the what do you call it, the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, there's so many ships in here. I mean, look at it. These are all ships. There's thousands of ships at any given moment. I don't think there's a place within the Persian Gulf that you can just look and not see a ship, okay? So it's not just I know a lot of people look at these maps and they think that it's just endless ocean. It's not. There's a lot of traffic, trillions of dollars worth of stuff goes through here every year. And if the Iranians wanted to close this off, they could. And it's not even so much that they would be able to constantly enforce it. It's more about the risk factor and the premiums for insurance that shipping vessels would pay, which would see much higher prices, not only on oil, but on whatever commodities are being transported through these regions. So the Houthis, even though they would likely be annihilated by a concerted effort by the Americans and Israel, they still control this whole waterway, and they could easily target Israeli ships. So what that means is that they're going to have to take a different way, right? They're going to have to go all the way around Africa, maybe, which is, I'm presuming, going to be like twice as expensive. And so is that the plan that they're cooking up? They're saying that we will not hesitate to target any Israeli ship in the Red Sea or any place we can reach starting the moment this statement is announced. So they basically declared this today. They're saying that as of today, if we see an Israeli ship, we're going to target it. Which is, of course, I mean, what they've done thus far is a declaration of war for all intents and purposes, a de facto state of war, if you will. And they're saying that we're going to continue the attacks on Israel. And maybe this is the hand that they're trying to play. And maybe this is why the Americans have had to play this one so delicately, because of the commercial shipping lanes that are right off the coast of their country. And the Americans are moving to put pressure on us through direct threats and threatening the return of a civil war in Yemen, as well as obstructing humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. So these guys are dead serious. I still don't understand entirely what their motives are, because, you know, they don't stand to gain a lot by sticking their necks out like this. But again, we don't know a lot about what's going on behind the scenes, who's the puppeteer behind all this. So it's really hard to say. For all we know, this guy just got a new contract with the CIA. Who knows? Who really knows, man? Hamas and Hezbollah's red line. Now, this is something I found strange, okay? Now, of course, as some of you know, Netanyahu has said, if we don't win, then Europe is next and you're next, you're being the United States. Hamas has said, speaking on Monday, Hamas representative in Beirut, Ahmad Abdul Hadi, said the allied militant group is not yet prepared to enter a fight and would only escalate operations against Israel in the event of a Hamas total defeat. And I don't think he was speaking sarcastically here. I think he was being very literal and matter of fact. Now is not the time, Hadi said, as quoted by NBC News. The red line for Hezbollah would be the full destruction of the resistance in Gaza. So why would you say that is the question, right? Like, why would you? Because remember, Hezbollah's red line was originally if you enter the Gaza Strip, we are going to invade. Well, that red line passed, just like many of Putin's red lines on Crimea or the Kerch Bridge or, take your pick. It never happened. They weren't acted upon because putting out red lines is stupid. You should always just maintain strategic ambiguity, and I think that's what Nasrallah is starting to try to do with his speeches. Anyways, why would Hamas do this? Is this so that they can almost entice the Israelis to get more deeply embedded in mission creep into the city and potentially into a massive killing field that they have planned? And then they're going to, that's when Hezbollah is going to act? Is that what's really going on here? You also have to wonder with these raids on the hospital. Now, it's interesting that Israel would start with the hospitals, and it could very well, the plan might be to evacuate these hospitals, get all the people out of the northern Gaza Strip, and just level the place. That could be what they're going to do. They're going to, just get as many civilians out as they possibly can. And honestly, at this point in time, that would be the only real way to do this without sustaining massive casualties. They've already apparently had 100 vehicles compromised. I know these numbers are not entirely accurate. They're basing it on satellite imagery, but the fog of war is thick. Both sides are lying through their teeth. I mean, every other day there's another actor or a nurse pretending to be a nurse. She's not a nurse. She's an actor, an Israeli actor, whatever. There's all these people lying through their frickin' teeth. It's impossible to know exactly what's going on, how many kills there are, how many casualties are, what's the extent of the casualties. Are they real casualties, or did a guy just, get a cut on his finger, So it's just important to kind of keep an open mind with respect to how the situation is developing, but that could be what the end goal is, to get all the civilians out and then just level the place with bunker busters and then go in there and, I don't know, you'll probably be in no man's land, contaminated for many years to come, or they're going to detonate underground nukes. I mean, that could very well be a thing. Remember, Israel is not shy of threatening the use of nuclear weapons and the Samson option. Now, of course, that one parliamentarian Netanyahu claimed to put in their place. But remember, that's not the first person who brought up the use of nuclear weapons that Israel claims to not have, in spite of the fact that every other country on earth is bound to the International Atomic Energy Agency standards, that you can't just have nuclear weapons and not disclose them. That's the whole, thing with Iran, right? Anyways, that's a long story. We won't go there. But there is that possibility that if things really do start to go sideways and a lot of these Arab countries turn on Israel, they will definitely utilize nuclear weapons. And they're trying to make that statement to the countries around them right now. But like I said yesterday, it's going to backfire. Because when you do what they're doing in the way that they're doing it, every other country completely loses trust. And it doesn't matter how much you try to butter them up in the future, they're never going to trust you, because they're going to know that you are the one who did what you did, killing thousands of children. And you can say that it was, targeted, it was, it was collateral damage, it wasn't discriminate or indiscriminate. It doesn't matter. Okay, countries are going to look at that. Countries are going to look at what happened in Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan. Nobody trusts Israel and the United States. They're all just biding their time. The Saudis are ready to jump ship whenever they think that there's a good out. The Saudis are gone. They're off the US dollar. As soon as they think they can do it safely without causing too much of a ruckus with the United States, they are gone. All these countries are gone. They're moving to BRICS. As soon as there's a viable alternative, see you later. That's just how it is. And guess who's going to get left holding the bag? People with US dollars. That's who. Okay, so I talked about my theory about what they're going to do when they evacuate the hospitals. Netanyahu is saying prepare for all scenarios. For the first time, he said since the war happened, Prime Minister Netanyahu summoned the heads of the authorities in the north to a meeting that will take place today. In the north, signaling that things are definitely escalating on the northern front. Netanyahu urges preparation for all scenarios as Gallant, the defense minister, says he's not concerned with a war with Hezbollah. Well, it sure didn't seem that way yesterday when you were specifically addressing them talking to a bunch of your lieutenants in what appeared to be a well-produced video for, propaganda consumption, right? So clearly they are thinking about it. How can you not think about it when the war is escalating on the Northern Front every day? So we know that war is coming. Now, just to change it up a little bit, and this is the message that Hamas sent out, I believe, on their Telegram channel. In the name of God, blah, 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 we hold the occupation and President Biden fully responsible for the Nazi occupation. So understand that what this means now is that now they can start to say, oh, Hamas is going to start to commit terrorist acts in the United States. Now, if there ever was a place that was vulnerable to those types of decentralized, asymmetrical style attacks, it's definitely going to be the United States. That's been evidenced in the attacks on the power grid that we've seen over the past couple years. It would not be difficult to do really anything in a society that really is very complacent in a lot of its security. And especially if you activated a lot of people at once, you have that border that's open and for the most part, and who knows what they have planned, okay? So, but now they can pin it on Hamas. I don't think Hamas would have any other reason to want to mess with people halfway across the world if they weren't being kicked out and ethnically cleansed out of their country. I don't think they would have a reason to exist. I mean, it's not like they just woke up one day, and everything was fine and they were living in a perfectly fair and equal democracy where everybody had access to the same amount of things and nobody was living in an open-air prison, and they just thought to themselves, I'm going to create a terrorist organization today and we're just going to wreak havoc on the other side of the world just because, right? No, there's context to this, guys. Anyways, Overton window, straddling that line. We got to keep going because the fun has only just begun. And when I say fun, I mean hell. One thing I can't stand is people who get excited about World War III, like it's going to be entertaining or riveting or, I don't want any of this to happen. It pains me to watch this shit. It infuriates me, to be brutally honest, when I see the stuff that happened on October 7th, when I see the stuff that's happening to civilians now. It infuriates the hell out of me. This is not stuff I want to see. When we see what's going on in the trenches, when what's going on with the forced mobilization between Ukraine and Russia, some people actually think this is fun and it's entertaining to them until that's you. And someday it is going to be you. That's what people need to understand. Eventually, that what you're seeing on your screen is going to be coming through your window. Anyways, rant done. That's all I'm going to say. The UK, I should say, is hosting U.S. nuclear weapons. There's a 144-bed facility being built at a Royal Air Force base in Suffolk, I do believe, and a campaign for nuclear disarmament is protesting this because, of course, these new B-61 air-launched nuclear bombs are going to be deployed there with 50 F-35s. Why are they being deployed there now? Why is the new nuclear stealth bomber being unveiled now? Why are there B-1 bombers touching down in Europe, the older ones? Just connect the dots, man. This is not rocket science. Okay, so 2 years ago, the UK said it would increase the stockpile of its Trident warheads by 40% to 260, while the US is updating its gravity bombs to the B-61-12, which has a maximum yield of 50 kilotons. That's wrong. It's actually 350 kilotons. Okay, so those are, they'll say those are tactical, but that's damn near strategic. I mean, that's 24 times the size of Hiroshima. That could completely annihilate New York City. Now, last but not least, actually not last, we got a few stories to cover here. Let's cover this one last, but I want to show you guys something. Oh yeah, Xi's in town, if you didn't know, in California. And again, like I say, I think this is the last Hail Mary. This is one last chance to try to rectify this problem before it gets kinetic. I think the Biden administration is going to try to play Xi for a sucker, and they're going to try to make him believe that everything they've said and done up until this point is meaningless. I don't think they're going to be able to mend this bridge I think that the Chinese will be able to obviously see through it. They know what's been going on in South Korea, in Japan, in the Philippines, building bases. They're not going to fall for this. This is not going to work. I can just tell you that right now. Whatever they're planning with this Gavin Newsom, the only thing that could potentially be happening here is that maybe this is some low-key takeover of California. I mean, who knows? I mean, who really knows what is going on here? But because, the states are very divided right now. So something to keep in mind. And apparently they were rolling out the red carpet, literally, the hammer and sickle red carpet, that is. This is in San Francisco, where they have a bunch of Chinese flags. I don't know if this is customary. No American flags. I mean, obviously, I think what you would want to do in this situation is you would want to juxtapose the American flags and the Chinese flags to show that you were trying to do some diplomacy, but of course that's going to be interpreted in the wrong way. Now, this idea that Joe Biden is giving Iran $10 billion, here's the deal with that. I did a little bit of research. This is for Iraq's electricity bill. The Iraqis get 40% of their electricity from the Iranians. If they don't have that electricity, then guess what? Doesn't function. Any U.S. military base, oil facilities, the whole 9 yards. Their civilization, which is already teetering on the brink of collapse, would totally collapse. This is why the Biden administration is forced to, they're not giving them money, okay? This is electricity that the Iranians sent to the Iraqis, hoping to get paid, and now they're getting paid for it, likely because they need more electricity. Okay, so that's all this is. It's just relief from sanctions. One might have to ask, why the hell do we have any authority over there to dictate who trades with what anyways? And this is why they hate us over there, okay, to be brutally honest. Not everybody, but, it's a complicated web we weave, but a lot of them do. Now, this is interesting. I look forward to hearing more about this. It's in its zygote phase. Nuclear spaceship being developed thanks to the U.S. military. Lockheed Martin has been granted $33.7 million contract by the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory to spearhead the Joint Emergent Technology Supplying on Orbit Nuclear Jetson effort. So what is this really for is the question. If the military is behind it, we know it's definitely not what they're promising. If this was true, I think Elon would be all over this, and maybe this is a necessary step because maybe there's some restrictions on commercial, non-governmental organizations using nuclear technology, even if it is in space. But I'm thinking that there's a double motive. So if any of you want to go and do a deep dive into this, and if you discover anything interesting, just send me an email, let me know about it. I just came across this today. This is kind of cool. This is cool technology. This company that was trying to pioneer this during the pandemic, I think they actually kind of went under. But these are drones that are putting out a fire, and it's actually a really good use for a drone. How effective it's going to be, obviously they're not carrying the water on them, but they're holding the hose, and they're powerful enough, I guess, to carry the water that is coming, or whatever this extinguishing agent is that's coming through the hose. So, I thought I would just end on a positive note. We're always talking about the negative stuff on this channel. It's hard not to nowadays. But, there are these incredible advancements in technology that we're witnessing all around us, especially in the evolution of drone technology and now